through the initial PowerPoint. Got it. Awesome. Okay, so we're recording. So as I was saying, we're going to start from where we left off. I'm going to probably go a little bit faster, and I know we have some additional people joining. Our seasoned veterans at the youth level are joining us tonight, so we're going to try to get through this. This will be a reminder for them. New stuff to the newer folks, but a reminder for them, and then we'll transition into some other things that I think will be applicable to everyone. Okay, so we were on boundary
Jack,
restart. Yes,
Scott Saunders here. If I could just have one moment before you get into the training, I
absolutely.
just
Go
want to
ahead.
let I would just like to let all of our umpires here know that I am the new youth assigner in the Madison area. It's a new role for me. I've been a long time boys official, but I was asked to take on the assigning. For those of you that are new officials entirely, that means I'm the person that's between the umpires and the games. I kind of do the pairing and make sure that all of the games are getting officials assigned to them. Um, since I'm new in this role, I'm working with some old contact lists and some things in our assigning system called Arbiter that may not be up to date. So what I'm going to do in the chat here is put my email and my phone number. And if you are on this call, and you want to work in the Madison area, if you're going to be an umpire in the Madison area for youth games, I need you to get in touch with me via one of those methods. So if you text me, that's fine. Please text me your name, your phone number, and your preferred email. If you email me, I need the same things: your name, your phone number, in case I have to text you, and your preferred email. I'll have that, but those sorts of things, so we can be in touch. But also, I need to put you into that assignings program. So if you're a brand new umpire, and even if you are a returning umpire, I want to double check all of that contact information and make sure that uh, you know you are in the system where I can give you games, if that makes sense. So again, I'm going to put my cell phone number and my email address into the chat, and I would love it if everybody would text or email me, and then I will be back in touch with you and however you get in contact with me. Thank you.
All right, and Scott, just from so you and I are on the same page, their eligibility will be contingent on obviously the completion of these two sessions plus the on-field on April 7th. So you and I will have to coordinate after April 7th, after the evaluation is done, to let you know that they are in fact eligible to be assigned.
Absolutely. So there is, we did the first session, it's recorded. We're doing the second session, it's recorded. Viewing of those, if you've missed the first one, and you're just on this call, you can view the recorded session and let Jack or myself know that you've done that. And there will be some kind of data acquisition and reconciliation to make sure that we know everyone has done the training sessions and participated in the field training. And most importantly, then what ties into this system called Arbiter that I use, I can check if your USA Lacrosse requirements are done. The youth lacrosse rules test is on the USA Lacrosse website. There's some additional videos I believe you have to view there, like concussions and rules updates. And once all of those boxes are checked, then we can certify you to officiate youth lacrosse games.
Yeah. And to be honest, my big concern is their rating on that on field. We'll know once we have them do some games on that April 7th day. I'll be taking notes and be able to say whether or not that person is in fact ready to actually umpire a game. So that's what's important to me. But everything else you've said applies as well. So thanks. Okay, so boundary self starts. Okay, ball has gone out of bounds. How do you restart? Basically, any player on the team can pick up the ball and self start. So, how do they do that? Well, number one, those of you, obviously, most of you are players. At the youth level, you cannot pass from out of bounds. And interestingly enough, at the high school and youth level, it is a foul to pass from out of bounds. So if they were in fact to pass it from out of bounds, you're going to blow your whistle. It's a change. Now, the interesting thing, and this will apply to a number of things, if they were to pass from out of bounds, you're going to blow your whistle, you're going to stop it, you're going to give a direction. It's illegal procedure, so it's the winding of your hands. You're going to point the direction. Now, since it was a foul, and it is when they pass from out of bounds, they will now step in to the field and self-start. They will not start from out of bounds. Okay, so you will change a direction, have them step onto the field. They get their 2 meters, and then at that point they will be able to self-start. Okay, obviously, when they're going to start from out of bounds, if they don't try to pass it, which hopefully they won't. And I would encourage you, especially with the younger kids, just keep telling them, don't pass it, don't pass it. You got to step in, you got to step in. So preemptive umpiring is always a good thing. Try to avoid having them foul. And again, the younger kids, no one's going to have an issue with them, and this in quotation marks, you coaching them. So don't worry about that. Now you start getting to the U14s, it gets a little bit iffy now when if you're gonna be coaching them. But I would certainly warn them a couple of times, don't do it, because you are going to have to change a possession. Make sure this is a place where a lot of times they get over exuberant. So somebody who is going to bring a ball in from out of bounds, they get 2 meters. So I mean that's a pretty good distance. So make sure they are getting their 2 meters. And that's another place where you can talk to them. Back up, give them the 2 meters, because if they don't, obviously that's going to be a foul. In college, it's called engagement foul. But in here, you're going to keep resetting them until they get the space they need. So as soon as they step across the line entering the field, then the other team can engage, but not until. So just make sure they get their room. And I know games will start getting hectic, but just make sure they're always getting that 2 meters when they're entering the field. And like I said, if a team consistently does not do it, I wouldn't warn them any more than, in my case, I wouldn't warn them any more than twice, and I'd start hitting them with cards. And we'll talk more about carding later, because you're going to have to control the game, and that's a really important piece. People are entitled to their 2 meters. Okay, ball crossing. Okay, same thing. When the ball crosses when it crosses the end line, all same deal. There's no change.
Hey Jack. Hey Jack,
Yes.
I'm sorry. Are you sharing your screen for this or just talking through stuff?
No, my screen should be showing. Is it not?
Isn't for me, but maybe
Well, maybe okay, let me see. Maybe I didn't do something here. I know last time. Maybe I didn't. I apologize, everybody. It looks like maybe I did not do that. Okay.
bottom of your screen there should be a green button.
Well, I think I just did that. So.
Oh, that's weird. There you go. Now it's coming
Okay,
up.
there we go. Oh, sorry, everybody. Luckily, what I was doing was not particularly complicated. So share a screen, play. Now you're full screen, right?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, cool. We're all set. All right. Basically, all this is they make a point that even on the end line, on both end lines, it's the same thing as it is on the sidelines. Okay. Now, the only change you're going to have, and I'll bring this up now, is if the ball goes out of bounds as a result of a foul. That's different. Okay. Ball goes out of bounds, sure, it's out of bounds, but it was the foul. So you're going to adjudicate the foul, which means you're going to restart on the field. Okay. So on the sidelines, foul happens, ball goes out of bounds. You're going to bring that ball back in, and you're going to now, instead of 2 meters, it's going to be 4 meters, because now you're going to put somebody behind. So you need to move them further onto the field so that you can put that person behind to properly set up that foul. Now, where it gets a little bit different is now, if this happens on an end line, as long as you're outside the dots, same deal. You're still going to bring them in 4, put the person behind. But if it happens in the critical scoring area, which is basically between those dots, now the issue becomes that you can never start the ball within 8 meters of the goal circle. So immediately, if you are behind those dots at the end line and you have a foul, you can't start it there. So you're going to have to take it out and start it at the dots. So a foul in the critical scoring area that causes an out of bounds, you're going to end up having to go to the dots because you can't start them. But if it's just a normal out of bounds, somebody shoots and the ball goes out of bounds, even if it's between the dots, they can pick that as once you've determined whose ball it is, they can immediately self-start even behind those dots if it's just a normal out of bounds. Okay. Okay, that's what I just talked about. Keep going. Too many crazy animations they got built into this thing that I'm not going to use. Okay, all fouls committed by the defense in the critical scoring area are going to be a whistle. Okay, so defense anywhere in the critical scoring area. So that's anywhere in between the 12, the 8, and behind into those dots is always going to require a whistle. Okay, the reason for that is, think about it. If you have a foul in between the 12 and the 8, or in the 8, you're going to set it up either on as a 12-meter or an 8-meter shot, which is going to take you a while. And so you're going to literally have to stop play. You're going to stop play and you're going to set them up. So you're going to want to have to restart that with a whistle. As I just said, if it happens behind the goal, it's the same thing. Since you're going to have to move them out to the dots and put somebody behind, you're going to need to start that with a whistle. Okay, this is the one place that you actually will end up, you potentially could have a false start. Okay, so your settings, you set them up, critical scoring area or on the dots. It's going to be a whistle. That person with the ball starts too soon. That will be a false start, and that is actually a foul. So anytime somebody false starts, when you have put somebody behind them, that's going to be a foul and it'll be a change of possession, okay, because you can't do that. But just always critical scoring area fouls by the defense, just keep telling them. Don't, it's going to be my whistle, my whistle, my whistle. Even in college, I will constantly say, this is my whistle, this is my whistle. Because they all want to go. They all are, dying to just start. So avoid the problems, avoid having to ding them with a gotcha false start. Tell them this is on a whistle, this is on a whistle. If they do it, you've warned them. That's all you can do, and change a possession. But otherwise, you can save yourself a lot of troubles. Okay, restarts in the penalty zone. Okay, so if you're looking here, this is what I was describing. Anywhere in between the 12 and the 8, anywhere in the 8, and anywhere down here between the dots is going to be that penalty zone. So you're going to have to set this up now. Anytime you're going to have a 12 or an 8-meter, if anytime you're having an 8-meter, you have to clear this entire zone. So you're basically going to stop play. You're going to set up your shooter on typically one of the hashes or the hanging hash. You're going to put your person who fouled behind, and this whole area needs to be cleared out. Now, I will tell you, obviously the little tiny kids, the U10s are not a huge issue. You're not going to see this a ton, and I never worry really about them getting hurt. But you get into U14s, that's where you got to do this. And I will tell you, they do not understand. So you're going to have to do a lot of hands-on management to clear them out. So make sure they're nowhere in here. They can't be anywhere here. Down here is where it really becomes an issue because they just don't understand. They're going to want to stand just behind here. That you just point to the dots. You got to be below or outside these two dots. So that helps get them out of there as well. So really, it's going to be all that setup, because otherwise they can all pretty much move anywhere they want. You just got to make sure that there's nobody here before, and that's your job to make sure that that gets done before you blow that whistle. Because again, if you blow that whistle, that's your fault if somebody's still there. Now, I will tell you, if you have cleared it out and you're getting ready to blow your whistle and somebody does, in fact, run through there thinking, it's free position, that is a false start. And you would grab that person, drag them back out to where your other person who committed the foul is, and they would be back behind the shooter. Okay, so anything, any movement, anything through this critical scoring area or the penalty zone, once you got it all set up, is in fact a false start. All right, rules have changed a bit. So some of you players been around a while. When there is a foul, you're going to clear that penalty zone. Used to be that we used to point them and say, okay, somebody right here, you're on that hash. Somebody over here, you're on this hash. Thank God they got rid of it. Now with free movement, it's just everybody out. And they can go anywhere they want. Now, they can't take forever. They can't all go all the way from, well, they could, but I would expect them to have to clear that zone, run all the way around and take their position over here if that's what they want to do. But they have the right to basically go just clear any way they want. Now, you've probably heard that defense, if I'm going to set up, let's say on this hash right here, the defense is entitled to first position on the next hashes. So my shooter's right here. Defense is entitled to the position on these hashes. Okay. Entitled doesn't mean they will necessarily always get them. I'll tell you, if I'm setting a shooter up and nobody seems to understand and nobody's on this hash and another attack person jumps in, perfectly fine. It is not your responsibility to make sure defense is setting up properly. And if if a defensive player is not going to take that spot, an attacker can take it. Okay. Now, if you got two of them fighting over it, you have to adjudicate that. And no, defense gets it, and that the attacker can basically stand right next to them. Okay. But just because they are entitled doesn't mean that they get it or that you're going to pull somebody over and put another defender on it. That's not your job. Okay. Obviously, everybody has to be 4 meters away from the shooter. So each hash is 4 meters. So as long as you're cleared here and your person who fouled is back behind the 12, everybody, basically, if I kind of draw an arc, is going to be 4 meters away. Okay. Anything else doesn't really matter. Like I said, the rest of every other player can stack up all within these next 2 hashes. It only matters is 4 meters away from that shooter. Stay away. Okay. Okay, we talked a little bit about free movement. Thank God they created this. Anybody away from an actual foul. So really, at this point, you're going to be controlling the person that was fouled and the person that fouled. Those are the people you're worried about. Everybody else basically has the right to move as they see fit. Okay, as long as they're staying 4 meters away. So somebody, let's say in this case, and it's a little hard to see, let's say X gets fouled here. And O did the fouling. So basically, those are the 2 people you're most concerned about. Okay, so you're going to basically, obviously, you're going to blow your whistle. You're going to signal direction. And as I said last week, direction is always the most important thing. That's all anybody's interested in. Which way are we going? So you point the direction X is going to go. So everybody knows it's X's ball. At that point, if you know it or you want to verbalize it, you can say, okay, illegal use of stick, in the whatever the foul is, you could indicate it either by signal or verbal. Then you're going to manage the O player, the person who fouled. If it was a major foul, you're going to move them 4 meters behind. Okay, so they go directly behind X. And anybody else, make sure everybody else that's anywhere near is going to be at least 4 meters away. Now, again, the only player that's behind is the person who fouled. Everybody else just needs to move 4 meters away. And that is their cushion. They get that until, in fact, they engage, okay? Or not engage, but until they actively move. And just a second to talk about that. Okay, once somebody gets that ball and now they can self-start, what constitute a self-start? And that's important. Basically, if X has the ball, everybody else around them cannot engage until they either take a step or they pass the ball. That those are the only two things that would allow everybody around to engage. And I tell you, you're going to see this constantly. They all get jittery feet. They all, you have X, and they take and they dribble the ball in there, or they, what's the word for but they in there, they move their stick, or they fake a pass. That is not allow engagement. They have to take a step or actively pass the ball. And if people are doing that, you got to stop them, back them up, and that person gets the 4 meters no matter what. And that's a lot of teaching, because they just don't seem to get it. They all want to jump in. Now, a lot of times, I'll never understand why coaches don't teach this, but the player who was fouled and now has the ball, they inevitably take all, they start moving their feet, and it's like, and they're standing there moving their feet, and everybody just condenses on them. And that's perfectly legal. They cannot move their feet, and they are not seemingly being taught that if you're not going to self-start, you're going to stand there. Do not move your feet. Okay. Obviously, they have the right, as soon as you've set up that foul, to self-start. Now, taking a step back, at the youth level, everything you're going to be doing, U.S. Lacrosse still requires them to pause. And honestly, I hate that, but that's the way they're doing it. So at youth level, they must pause. So if you're going to blow your whistle for a foul, the person who was fouled needs to, if they still have it, they still need to pause. Okay, which means 2 feet stopping. As soon as they've done that, then they will be able to self-start. Okay, that's going to be a judgment on your part, and it's kind of an art that you're going to learn. Did they pause? Now, I know some referees that absolutely are looking for 2 feet in cement, complete stop. I will tell you that's never been my deal, but I want to see, they have to stop. I mean, they have to pause, because the big thing is that they can't restart, far away from the ball and run down the field where everybody else is still wondering what's going on. And it will happen to you, I guarantee it. And in that case, if your gut tells you they just got an unfair advantage, just pull them back and restart it, because inevitably, they'll end up scoring a goal, and it'll cause pandemonium, and you'll know it was your fault for not stopping them. So have them pause. Now, the other point is it really that pause, if imagine they drop the ball and all of a sudden they get fouled. Half the time they drop the ball rolls from where their stick, and it can roll all the way. It can roll 2 feet. It can roll, 30 yards. Basically, if it's 2 feet, they can pick it up, pause right there, and go. No problem. Ball rolls 30 yards, or 10 yards even, it's over here. They can't run over there, pick it up, pause, and run. That's not legal. Okay, that would create too much of an advantage for them. Somebody would have to bring that ball back into this area where the foul occurred, and then pause and restart from there. And again, I'm just going to warn you, make sure you're not ever letting them start farther away than a couple of yards from where that foul occurred, because with self-start, it's so easy to get an unfair. Matter of fact, it happened today in a college game. Ball went out of bounds, and the girl took it and really came back onto the field a good 5, 6, 7 yards further towards the goal than what she should have. And lo and behold, sure enough, she scores a goal, which, from my perspective, she did gain an unfair advantage. We should have stopped it and reset her and made her go back to where the ball actually should have been from out of bounds. So just think about that when you're setting up any kind of foul. So basically that's what we talked about. Okay, 3 seconds. In the little tiny kids, your U10s, you're not going to see this a lot, Well, I take that back. You see it occasionally. This you just got to keep yelling at them. You know, get out of the 8, get out of the 8, get out of the 8. I want to say the rule of the U10s is what they can't be within that 5-yard area in front of the net. You know, so you just have to watch them. I mean, they can't just post up and stand here when people are coming in. Now, when you get to the U14s, you're going to have the official 3-second rule. Okay. Obviously, they need to be, the ball has to be entering the critical scoring area. I mean, you're never going to call 3 seconds until there's, well, I take that back. You know, I'm reading ahead here and getting myself confused. Okay, 3 seconds begins counting from the time they cross the restraining line. Okay, so when the ball comes, when the attack has the ball, starts crossing the restraining line, that's when you would start looking if somebody is in 3 seconds, if they've been in that 8-meter too long. Okay, so that's when you're going to start counting. Now, the youth level, you know, certainly the still is still at high school. It's going to be the stick length. So that's pretty close. I mean, your stick isn't that long. So it's what, you know, 3 feet. And that's still the high school rule. So it's still a rule for the U14s as well. That's pretty close. So it's pretty easy to actually have 3 seconds because they need to be marking somebody. And if they're not marking somebody within a stick length, then you're going to be counting them for potential 3 seconds. All right. Just so we're aware, we did talk about lead and trail last time. Your lead would be down here. They're watching the ball. So it's really going to be your trail who's going to be back here looking off ball and watching to see if somebody is non-marking and has been in that 8-meter for that 3 seconds. And basically your count, you know, 1, 1,000, 2, 2,000, 3, 3,000. All right. And they had better be either on their way or out when you hit 3,000. It's not a gotcha call, but if they're in there, you're going to have to keep watching and getting them out. And then your 3 seconds administration, you're going basically, going to be depending on where the ball is. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so you're going to either be on the 12. So obviously, if the ball is outside of the 12, you're going to set up on the 12. If the ball is inside the 8, you're going to be setting up on a hash mark within the 8. And if it's below the goal line extended, then you're always going to put them on a dot. Okay. The only one thing is, remember, the attack has to have possession to be calling a 3 seconds. And this is always a tough one. You're out there counting 1, 1,000, 2, 2,000, and then they drop the ball. Well, that's the end of your count. You have to restart your count because they've lost possession. You know, even if they just pick it right back up, it's still a restart of the count. So again, it's got to be a continuous possession for 3 seconds to be called. You know, usually I find 3 seconds, you start picking up on it. It's when players are lost. All of a sudden they forget or they've lost their man who they're defending, and they're just either standing there looking or they're waiting for that next cutter, and they all of a sudden are looking up and they got this dazed look on their face. You can tell they don't know where they're supposed to go, and that's typically what you'll see. You'll also see some, you know, low-end defenses where you have somebody playing a defender. I think it's some kind of zone where they'll be here and somebody starts moving in. Well, all of a sudden they just kind of drift into here, and next thing you know, they're just standing there, and they're just not entitled. What you're going to see is, and the reason why 3 seconds is so important is because they're taking up space they're not entitled to. They're blocking cutters, and they're blocking the attack's ability to come in and actually shoot. So if you allow them and you're not calling 3 seconds, what I guarantee what you're going to start seeing next is either shooting space or dangerous propel, because that is the next step in 3 seconds. If they're sitting there, you're either going to have shooting space, which now all of a sudden you have to be on your toes to get it, or you're going to end up having people shooting and hitting people, and you're going to have green cards for dangerous propel. And that's really not fair. I will tell you, and this is kind of something I don't often see, there are teams, for whatever reason, that don't understand 3 seconds, and you just call it again and again and again. I tell you, if you've called the same player more than twice for 3 seconds, and use your judgment, whether it's two or three. But after three, start carding them for it, because now either they're doing it on purpose or they're not learning. And that's a disadvantage to the attackers. So multiple 3 seconds on the same player, you need to start elevating the penalty for it. And I would suggest you green or you yellow card them for it, and it's just repeated major fouls, because you've got to get them out of there. It's dangerous for everybody and not fair. Okay, this should be saying, what is professionalism? So we're going to talk a little bit. I know it has a lot to do. All of these things, matter. As an official, you're going to be held to a different standard. You're kind of stepping out of being a player, and a player, you just go out and play, and that's all you're interested in. But now all of a sudden, as an official, you've become kind of a role model. You are, kind of the you stand out now. Everybody's looking at you because you're the one out there making decisions. So again, character, I think they're really implying, the game has to be fair. So your job is to make sure everything that happens is in fact fair. Attitude, you need to have a good attitude. And, no matter what happens, you have to realize you have a job to do. You're getting paid to do it, and you have to do it to the best of your ability. And I would tell you, there's a lot of times you're just hating that job today. I mean, the two teams are just hacking each other. The coach is yelling. I mean, it can be at times miserable, but you've just got to block all of that out. It's like putting your earphones in and having, noise cancellation. Focus on what you're doing, because you control that game. Your conduct is going to impact everything that's happening around you. And we'll get talking about how you control the game a bit later on. And then it comes down to just, your competency, the training we're doing now, your continuous desire, hopefully, to learn and improve, knowing the rules, knowing your setups, and just all of these things are going to all add up to, really your enjoyment of umpiring, but also your excellence as an umpire. Professionalism comes down a lot to, what you look like. I will tell you, and you see it all the time. If you're at a game and, you see an umpire that's got a raggedy old jacket and some pants that are too short and, cruddy old shoes, and they don't have their cards, right off the bat, I tell you, you don't get the same respect as if you show up with, that, a good looking jersey, the right shorts and pants, shoes that are, I know you don't polish shoes anymore, but they used to, and all your equipment, and you show up professional and ready to go. I tell you, you're halfway there to getting the respect that I know you would hope. Equipment, obviously, you need a whistle. And I will tell you, you need more than one. I would encourage you to, start collecting them. Whistles do fail. Whistles get lost. Your partner forgets a whistle. So having a couple with you, and it's Fox 40. That is the class whistle, nothing else. I don't mean to be picky, but Fox 40 is the accepted whistle for a referee. So whatever you do, you buy Fox 40s, and they're not cheap. They're 10, 12, or at least they were, $1 a piece, but you at least would want a couple of them. In this case, you can see it's on a lanyard. Some people will buy finger ones. There's little finger attachments that they hook to your fingers. It's really up to you. I used to do the fingers. Now I have two whistles that are connected with a O-ring, and I carry them in my hand. So it's really up to you. A yellow flag. Yellow flag is going to be basically what we call a slow whistle. There are times on the field usually in the critical scoring area, where instead of blowing your whistle and stopping a scoring play, you will pull out your flag and let that person continue to net. I will tell you that is a more advanced skill. None of us are expecting you to do that, but it's always good to have a flag and start practicing, because it's something you learn over time. And it really does up your umpiring once you start understanding and being able to, not jump to blow the whistle when somebody is on a scoring play. Okay, you need your cards. Here in lacrosse, we got red, yellow, and green. Certainly at the youth level, you're far more likely you'll be using your yellow card more than anything. Okay, that's going to be your 2-minute penalty in all of youth. Occasionally you might see a green. Hopefully, I honestly, I would hope you never in your career will see a red. You probably will, but we don't see a ton of them where you're going to actually eject somebody from the game. Always have your rule book, and I hope that all of you were able to go out and get a rule book, a paper rule book, or if you want to keep it on your phone and can do it that way, no issue. But you should have a rule book on the field, because I will tell you, if you make a call and people don't agree with it, there will always be a coach that will run out with their rule book in hand, pointing at a page. Doesn't mean they're right, but they'll have that rule book and want to convince you that what you've just called is not correct. So you're going to need to be in a position to be able to look up a rule at some point. You don't assume that you're going to stop dead on when you can tell the coach, go back to the bench, and you'll talk to them at halftime and you can basically work it out. But you're going to want your rule book. Measuring tape, people do stick checks. Now at the youth level, I've never seen one. But again, that's something you're going to want to have in your bag as you move up. Used to be at college, we used to use the measuring tapes, but I haven't even pulled one out in the college level for years. But you will want to just find yourself a little measuring tape. You're going to want something to write on, or write with and write on. So a pencil or a pen, something that you can keep in a pocket or attach to a pocket, something. They get lost, so you might want to have a few of them. What I do, and just so I take my yellow card and somebody taught me years ago, I use Post-it notes. I get yellow Post-it notes, and I'll take a yellow Post-it note and I will fold it over my yellow card. So, just a little strip of sticky and I fold it around. So now my yellow card also becomes my writing, where I write all my stuff down. Because we'll talk more about cards, but you're going to want to keep track of timeouts. You're going to need to keep track of yellow cards, because if people get, two, they're out of the game. So you need to keep track of that stuff. So you need something to write on. And that's often easy using your yellow card to do that with a yellow Post-it note. You need a coin, you need something. Coins oftentimes are little, so you're going to want to find something. I know US Lacrosse often has medallions you can use. I've used for years. I found unique poker chips that have a head and a tail to them of some kind. And you just have it all the time, because when you're doing your coaches meetings, you're going to need to flip a coin, and you're going to need that coin. So your lead official, whoever is designated for that game, is in fact going to need a coin. So you're going to want all this stuff goes in a bag. Now, I carry a backpack because, this time of year I have, all sorts of clothes to keep warm and gloves, and everything goes in that bag. Maybe in the summer you just do something smaller. I know people that keep a little, I don't know, some almost the size of like a fanny pack or something, but you decide how you want to keep it. But all of that stuff you should have with you for every game. And that all comes down again to what we're talking professionalism. Okay, game management. I talked about a little bit about this the last time. And really your job out there is to keep the game fair. But a lot of times doing that can become something of a challenge. Every game is different. Every team is different, and you're going to see them reacting to each other differently. I've been to games where I literally have not called a foul the entire game. It's wonderful to watch two teams play like that. And then you're going to have other games that you're not going to get, more than a couple of seconds, and it's going to be constant fouls. And typically, when you have something like that, the fouls, if you're not managing the game, will get worse and worse and worse. And you're going to have parents screaming and coaches, and that's something that you need to manage. And that's really what we get here, what we call game management. All right, so what do we mean? Well, managing the clock, honestly, at the youth level, that's fairly easy to do. You don't have, possession clocks and the like, but you got to know, how much time is on the clock. You got to know, that, the horns are working so that that, when the quarter is ending. So make sure the clock is working. So you're in charge of making sure your timers know what they're doing. Managing the fouls. And that's part of what this training is about. You need to be able to recognize fouls, and you need to know how to set up fouls. Now, last time I told you to go out and get the umpires handbooks, which are different than the rule book. And it's that handbook that really helps you go through the situations and tells you how to set up the.
Same thing I heard last year.
Now, this is where I was talking about setting the tone of the game. If you're getting a game that's getting, and again, quotation marks, out of hand, and you'll have coaches telling you it's getting out of hand. That's a pet peeve of mine, because they're the ones screaming at their players to, do what they're doing. But you have the ability to set the tone of the game. If the game is in your vision getting out of hand, then you're not doing enough to control it. Now, we'll talk about carding, and I just want to make sure carding is your friend. That is your one and only tool to be able to help control and set the tone of the game. If people are consistently fouling, that means they're not paying attention to you. Every time you blow your whistle for a foul, a player is supposed to be learning, I can't do that. That was illegal. I shouldn't do that. If you're blowing your whistle and you're having to continuously blow it for the same fouls, the same players, they're not getting it. And you need to elevate that penalty beyond just a whistle and start carding. Once you start carding, you will start changing the tone of the game. And to be honest, everybody will respect that, including the coaches. And I think I mentioned it last time. A player gets 2 yellow cards, they're out of the game. Okay, so that's one of your problems gone. And again, at the youth level, I will tell you that you will see it. You will see a team that's basically pretty unskilled, except for 1 or 2 players, and those 1 or 2 players just are wreaking havoc on the game. And that's where you have to decide if those 1 or 2 players are constantly fouling. That's where you're going to elevate it. You're going to yellow card them. And if it comes to it where they are dangerous, just get that second yellow card and they are out of the game for the rest of the game, which again changes the tenor of the game. And again, you unfortunately, you will see players that are basically hacks, and they're just dangerous to have in the game. And your only way of dealing with that is yellow carding them. And obviously they need to deserve it, but that is a game management tool. All right, unsportsmanlike behavior, and this is both. You see it both on players. A lot of times you're going to find, especially at the youth level, oh, she just swore at me. Oh, she just swore at me. Well, honestly, and from my side of it, I have to hear it. If I don't hear it, I can't even pay attention to it, because I'm not going to just take somebody's word that somebody's swearing. Now, if you hear it, that's a different deal. And now, inevitably, I can't tell you how many times I will hear a player who fumbles a ball or something, and they swear under their breath. If they're doing that to themselves, they're just unhappy with their own. I'm very likely to ignore it. But if I have somebody who makes some kind of comment to another player, that is unsportsmanlike. That is a yellow card. We cannot have people talking to other players, to you, in that way. Okay, so is swearing a foul? Like I said, it's depending on how it's used. If it's against myself and it's not overly loud, I'm probably going to ignore it. But as soon as it's directed at somebody else, that is a yellow card. Okay. And again, that's the kind of thing you can't be afraid to do it. Jump on it early and hard, and you will end that stuff very, very quickly. Other unsportsmanlike, and I'll tell you now, as a youth official, and I know you guys are high school students, and a lot of times you have coaches that could be college, could be older. They have no right to disrespect you. They have no right to question you. A coach can ask a question regarding a rule. What rule was that? What did you just call? What did you see? Those are all questions. Those are all perfectly acceptable. Now, again, you're not going to stop the game and have this conversation. That you're just going to say, Coach, I'll talk to you, at halftime. But they are entitled to ask you questions about what you called and discuss a rule. As soon as they start questioning a call, again, not questioning the rule, but well, that wasn't a push. That wasn't in the sphere. She didn't hit her. As soon as they start questioning your decision, that is unsportsmanlike conduct. First time they do it, Coach, that's enough. Coach, we've heard enough. Coach, stop. Okay, nicely, this all comes where your professional is, but they are not allowed to do that. Coach, stop. And if you want, typically that I don't even think you need to go beyond. The second time they do it, you blow that whistle as hard as you can blow it, stop the game, pull out your yellow card, and say, Coach, that's the end of that. Okay? And they would have to pull a player off the field, sit the 2 minutes. Okay? And so you need to be able to do that. That is your control. And I would tell you, whoever's doing it, a coach has no right to question you, to berate you, or to make your life difficult on a day. You're doing your job. They should be doing theirs. And I just want you to be aware. Tell them to stop. And after that, you pull out those cards. Now, same thing happens with spectators. How do you deal with spectators? Spectators can be a pain. You got every dad and mom who think they know all the rules, which they don't. Those kind of situations, those you're going to ask for. If a spectator is yelling at you, or I see a lot yelling at other players, that's where, again, I would stop the game. You go over to the coaches and say, Coaches, I don't know whose parent this is. They need to be dealt with. Now, oftentimes there is a management. The home team will have a game management manager, and they will go over and deal with the parents. But it is the coach's responsibility. And if a coach does not respond to their parents, again, you're gonna jump it up to a yellow card if that in fact will continue. Do not engage with spectators. Okay, I'm just telling you right now, there's nothing to be gained by doing it. If you want to joke with them, there's sometimes I say, hey, you know the rules really well. Why don't you, we got training next week. Come on and be an official. But beyond that, do not engage with spectators. Just keep your mind on the game. If they're bothering you or other players, go to that game manager or the coach and have them deal with it. And there's a lot of times, and you'll see this a lot of times, tournaments where they'll escort parents out of the area. I mean, they'll be asked to leave the facility because it's just not acceptable. So again, I know I'm beating a drum here, but you should not be having to deal with that. So don't let it happen to you. Deal with it early on. There's one example. I went to a game one night, and I don't know, must have been a boys game or something. And there was a huge contingent of boys watching it, which is wonderful. They're over there cheering, and they're all stupid. They have no idea of any of the rules. So they're yelling and screaming and stuff. And it's hilarious because they have no idea. But then I had a player said, hey, those guys were yelling at me. So I had to go over to them and I just asked them, hey guys, we can't do that. And they did. They were fine and they went away and kind of dispersed. There's been other times where again I did the same thing and it didn't work and I had to go get that game manager to go run them out of there. So again, all of this is you managing the game. It's all part of your job. Any questions on that or? Okay, and at this point, this is something you're going to get better and better at as time goes on. And I just want to make sure you're starting to learn it and understand that you are in control because I will tell you, more people leave being officials because of those things. Okay. All right, so the tone of the game, be prepared for anything. You know, as I already said, let the game come to you. I mean, you look at it. Do I need to call these fouls? Do I need to start carding these fouls or are they just normal fouls? Are they continuing to do things they shouldn't be? Do I need to do it? At the youth level, used to be they would hold for advantage. I will tell you, advantage is something that really only matters when you start getting to more skilled players. Holding an advantage at the U10 or even some of the lower level U14, it's not helping because 2 seconds after you have advantage, they're dropping the ball and it's not really doing it. At most youth games, I will tell you, don't even bother to hold advantage. Just blow it up and set up the foul. Now, if you start getting to really higher skilled U4 teams, then I'd say, okay, in the midfield, put your arm up, blow your whistle, put your arm up, or excuse me, don't blow the whistle, just put your arm up, signaling to everybody, okay, I saw that, but I'm letting them play. If that attacker is basically working through a foul. Now, any foul that's going to be carded, no, you're going to blow it up no matter what. You have no advantage. But advantage is a tool you can use, again, for a higher level game, which you're probably not going to see as much. I mean, maybe. And then really pay attention. Coaches like to be heard. Now, unfortunately, they like to be heard more than they should. They can't. I mean, one of the worst things is having a coach, chirping in your ear the whole time. You're here trying to watch the game, and they're talking about a play that happened, 3 minutes ago. And it's like, coach, stop. Basically, your best bet is when coach says something to you, just say, coach, we'll talk. Either we'll talk later or coach, I got it. I heard you. And then just keep going. You're not going to stop. But if it's something you can say, I got it. I heard you. And then just keep doing what you're doing. Yeah, sometimes a good coach will actually question you on something and you'll realize, oh, he was right. You might want to go up to him later and say, coach, you were right on that. I made a mistake. Or what I'll do is I said, yep, he was right. I'm not going to get that one wrong again. And just my own self-talk that, okay, I just learned something. He was right or she was right. So you listen to them, but you cannot let them disrupt should be going on in your head. Yeah, this is a big one. Communication, verbal versus nonverbal. Verbal is what's coming out of your mouth, and I would encourage you. That's why I said don't ever engage with spectators. Keep your talk to coaches to a minimum. Just respectful and positive. Use the language of the rule book when you're speaking as an umpire. The nonverbal are the things that can get you in trouble too. You're there to do a job. You have to look ready, competent, and basically happy to be there. I've seen officials, walking around with their shoulders down. They just look lazy. They're not really working very hard. Those are the people that the coaches are going to have they know that. So you just want to make sure that your body is saying what you want everybody to hear. Look the part, look engaged, look ready to be where you're supposed to be. And all those things add up to you getting the respect as a youth official that I know you're hoping to get. All right, we kind of just talked about this. Well, cards, use them. You know, they are your tool to control things. Your whistle. There are times that you may not be carding, but there are times where somebody is fouling and they're fouling way harder than I like. It might maybe hasn't gotten to the point where I'm going to card it, but I will blow that whistle as hard as I can. You know, because normally just an out of bounds or just a normal cover or something simple is just a little tweak. But if they're starting to foul and the fouls are getting harder, I will blow that whistle. And to be honest, even if I'm close, I'll blow it really hard. It shakes them up when all of a sudden they get blasted with that whistle, and it's an indication that I did not like what I just saw. Okay, so think about that too. A whistle can be a big thing even before a card. Uh, use your signals. I mean, as you start learning your arm and hand signals, they call them in stadium signals in college because basically, TV needs to see them. Uh, Start getting in a habit, and we'll do this when we get on the field. When you're going to blow your whistle, I want you to stop. So you're running down the field, you see a foul. If you decided to blow your whistle, blow your whistle. I want you to stop. I want you to take a breath. I want you to give direction. Which way's the ball going? I want you to give the signal. And I want that signal nice and tall, up over as high as you can put it. So it should be up over your head, and it should be pointing towards basically the benches where the coaches can see it. Okay. And it really comes down to blowing that whistle and stopping and taking that breath. It gives you a chance to think about, okay, what have I called? What was it? And how am I going to set it up? And it makes you put your shoulders back and look, hey, and everybody looks at, they know what they know you know what you're doing. And that's what we're trying to get across. You want them to know that you're in control of this game. I see a lot of people, especially when they're starting out, they'll give a little tiny tweet on the whistle. Their head is down. They're kind of walking around with their shoulders stooped, and they're kind of pointing or talking to the players, and nobody knows what's going on. And over time, I tell you, that eats away at your credibility. People don't think you know what you're doing. The simple point of blowing the whistle, standing tall, stopping, taking a breath, direction signal makes them realize, hey, this person knows what they're doing. So think about that when you're out on the field. Okay, we already talked about this. Again, use the language of the rule book. If you're going to call a foul and somebody's going to talk about it, you want to be using the descriptions, the definitions that are in the rule book. And again, this is something you'll gain over time, but try to use that language. Yeah, try. Honestly, obviously, you're not going to be doing schools that you're affiliated with. But again, given that you're going to be closer to age, I would tell you try to avoid a lot of interaction with players. I mean, obviously, you want to answer questions. You want to, if people are tempers are getting up, you want to just step in and make sure you kind of get them apart. Be clear what you expect them, respect them, and they'll respect you. But try to avoid interacting with them any more than really is professionally necessary. That's just part of the professionalism. Definitely, you don't yell. You'll never yell at a player. I mean, yelling is a no-no. You don't want to yell. You don't want to escalate negative emotions. So you don't want to get mad at people. I tell you, if you're getting mad at them, you've missed something because something you should have done. They should have been carded. Something should have stopped that before it got to the point where you're mad at an individual player. So try to keep negative emotions. Don't threaten cards. I mean, that's something. And I'll be honest. When I was young, when I was newer to this, I will tell you that I probably did that a few times where I say, next time I see that, that's a card. No, you don't do that. You just if you're gonna give them a card, give them a card, but don't threaten it. Now, if you say, I wouldn't have an issue, number two, watch in the sphere or watch the stick contact, but don't tell them next one's a card. Just if you're going to card them, card them. And the other thing is, this one's an interesting one. You're not supposed to coach players. I will tell you at U10, I think as much as anything, you're probably expected. Now, you're not going to coach them on strategy, but you're going to certainly teach them the game. You're going to have to teach them how to do a draw. You're going to have to, teach them at times, how to, bring a ball from out of bounds. There's a lot of times that you're going to start helping and, parentheses, coach them. But that's U10. I will tell you, you get to U14, you don't do that anymore. You really have to stop, or avoid coaching. That's their coach's job. And you got to, as much as you can, stay out of and not get caught doing that, because it made people start thinking you're biased if you start doing that. Okay, you're working as a team. You guys are going to either do games. Little tiny kids you might do alone, but you're always going to do U14s together. You're going to want to get there in time, to make sure that your partner is ready to go and that you understand how you're going to call the game. You're going to, just keep checking with your partners. Make sure you got anything for me, because you want to make sure that you're calling the game the same. And ask, okay, I've noticed that you've kind of let them do this. What's your thinking? Because again, you can't have one umpire, calling 3 seconds or, shooting space or things, and the other umpire not doing that. You got to make sure through discussions that you're kind of on the same page. So you want to continue to talk. Post game, it happens, but I will tell you that most people just need to get on to the next game a lot of times. But again, there's a lot of times that I'll come home and I'll look up a rule and I will, cut and paste, and I'll send it to my umpiring team saying, okay, we did the right thing here, or we should have done this differently, or we got this one wrong. So even after a game, a discussion will often continue that's going to be for the benefit of the whole team. And we'll do that. You'll constantly see people again. And, that's some of the good things you can do in a pregame. I mean, I'll tell you, at the college level, inevitably, that's the discussion when we first show up. Have you seen anything unusual? Or remember what we did in that game? Well, I've decided this is how I should have handled it. And those kinds of things are all part of your and the rest of your team's professional development. All right, now, so let's see. Let's see if I can get to my next spot here. All right, I'm doing that. I might as well do it. Okay, we're going to do misconduct and carding. And I'm going to go through this fast because I know we already talked about a bunch of this. Okay, and I apologize. I wasn't able to correct some of the fonts and things. Okay, so misconduct. I mean, anytime people are doing things that are not based off the rules, I mean, essentially you are, getting into the area of misconduct, and we're going to have to deal with it. The fouls that are going to be most important to you, again, certainly at the U14s, check to the head, slash, dangerous propel, dangerous follow through, dangerous contact, and unsportsmanlike conduct. These are cards. These are mandatory cards. Okay, and these are the things that if these things are happening in your game and you are not yellow carding them, your game is going to get out of hand very, very quickly. So these are the things you have to learn early on to identify, and there is just no question. And that's the beauty of being mandatory cards. You don't have to think about it. Somebody gets hit in the head, boom, you're blowing that whistle. It is an absolute card. No one can argue with it. Some of the other ones, slash, honestly, a slash is also one of the ones. I mean, somebody hits somebody in the body, that's going to be a yellow card. Now, certainly at the youth level, and I don't care what level, somebody takes a big wild swing, had no intention of doing anything positive, was not playing the ball, was basically just wildly swinging their stick, and don't let anybody tells you that they have to hit the ground for it to be a slash. I don't care if it's a big, dangerous, wild swing. That's a slash. Okay, so do not think that the definition has to be hit the ground or whatever else. If it's dangerous and wild, and they had no really intention, or they weren't in any position to make a legal check, that's a slash. So don't be afraid to call it. Dangerous propel usually is going to happen when somebody shoots. Probably there should have been shooting space, but maybe it didn't get called, or even if it did, if they hit somebody with the ball, that's when they're shooting or passing, that's going to be a dangerous propel. Dangerous follow through. This is a tough one because it's easy for your eyes to go into the net with the ball. But somebody shoots and their follow through hits somebody in the head, in the shoulder. That is dangerous. That is a yellow card. Okay, dangerous contact. This is where somebody is pushing either with, I don't care whether it's their hands. Most times it's a cross check in the back, but they're making contact to a defenseless player. Most oftentimes it's somebody that's running, looking the other way. More often than not, they're trying to pick up a loose ball and somebody just jacks them up from behind. That is dangerous contact. No question, it is a yellow card. Okay, and then we talked about this on sportsmanlike conduct and whether verbal or physical. And that would be, obviously, you're going to, use the yellow card, but that could also go into if it's bad enough, it could be a red card, which is going to get them ejected from that game and the next game. Okay, so, and again, these are the things that get parents and coaches and players start winding them up. If these things are happening and they're not getting called, the game is going to start getting away from you. So these are so easy. Once you start doing it and getting comfortable and pulling that yellow card, you will start seeing that game change dramatically. Okay. Yeah, so, and looking at the last one, baiting or taunting, these are the kind of things where, again, it's kind of verbal. The physical ones oftentimes are easy, but you got to be careful that you don't have people that are, that's where we got talking about swearing at each other or taunting one another. Those are the kind of things that they're also going to be, deemed, especially early on, a yellow card or even potentially a red. I'm thinking, at the youth level, you don't see a ton of it, but you will. U14, they start getting a little wound up, and you're going to be needing to be ready, to deal with a misconduct with a yellow card. We said this before, repetitive fouls. If you're seeing somebody, who's, just reckless checks across the body, and we'll get to that in a second. But somebody just keeps checking and checking, and they're just not making legal checks, and they are not hearing you with your whistle, and they're not stopping even time and time with major fouls. Repetitive foul is a yellow card. So I'd encourage you, use it, because if they're not paying attention, the yellow card should get their attention. Okay, and the youth level, all cards. Now, in the little kids, all you do is you ask them to leave the field, and the coach just has them sit over there for a little while, and there's really no time associated with it, and then they can come back in. So it's not a big deal, but I still wouldn't be. There's been times where I said, "Coach, you need to take number 3 out." They just need to sit for a little while. But in U14, it's standard cards. In U14 high school, cards are non-releasable, so they sit their entire 2 minutes. And obviously, game management, you need somebody over there on a timer telling them when they can go back in. I would tell you, we talked last week that you should have a watch because you may need to time those penalties yourself. 2 yellow cards is they fouled out. I mean, if somebody gets their second yellow card, they are out for the rest of the game. Okay, they serve the second yellow, and then they're on the bench for the rest. You know, they can be replaced, but they serve their second. The team serves the second, and then they go to the bench and they can be replaced. So again, you get somebody who's hacking out there, and ultimately, sometimes it's a good thing if they foul out of the game. Okay. Okay, an ejected player, that's a different deal. A red card is an ejection, and they are out of that game for the rest of that game, and they'd also be suspended from the next game. And that's where you would have to let your assigner know. So if you were to actually give a red card to a player in one of your games, you would need to contact Scott and let him know, because I mean, there's things that he needs to do and the association needs to do. So that goes down, it kind of goes down in the player's permanent record card. So they can't play in that next game. Okay, goalies, a little bit different. Typically, there's usually only one goalie around. So if a goalie fouls, now normally on just a normal foul, if the goalie is in their circle, they get to stay in the circle, and you're going to. But if they're outside of the circle, so if they leave their circle and they foul somebody, you treat them just like a normal player. And a lot of times people, I mean, it's a big deal. So goalie leaves their circle and, I don't know, just dangerous check somebody in the 8. You're going to set that player up on an 8-meter hash and put the goalie 4 behind with an empty net. Okay. Had that goalie been in their circle and, checked outside of the circle, they would have gotten to stay in because they were in the circle. Now, if a goalie gets carded, all bets are off. If the goalie gets carded, if there is another goalie, they need to swap that goalie out. So the goalie sits the 2 minutes, the other goalie comes in and takes their place. Another player on the field goes and sits with that goalie to make the penalty. Now, I will tell you that if there is not a second goalie, and most times there is not, then the goalie can actually stay in the game, but somebody else is going to have to go sit that penalty. Okay, so the goalies do serve, but again, you want to keep the game going. So if a goalie gets a card, another player is going to have to sit for them if there's not a goalie somebody to replace them. Now, if the goalie is ejected, that's end of story. Goalie is ejected. And typically, if they wouldn't have a second goalie, that could be the end of the game. Okay, just remember that when they are playing short, I mean, this is where you get most of your offsides. If in fact you are issuing a card, now a team are going to play short. So instead of having 7 below the restraining line, now they have 1 card, they're going to be 1 player short. So instead of 7, 6 in the goalie, 7 plus the goalie, they're going to have to play 1 less. So they'll have 6 in the goalie. And that's where your trail is going to have to start counting. Because inevitably the teams who are playing short, who have a card, that's where they go off sides. They end up with 7 players in the goalie, and you got to be counting them, and so that'll be off sides. And that's at both ends, both in their offense and defensive end. Just a technique to start learning. I will tell you, it's if you think about it, it's 7 ahead, 4 back. I mean, that's typically the setup. And when you're new, I can count back. I only count the 4. That's a lot easier than counting the 7 ahead. Well, you can't really do that. So I will tell you, US Lacrosse will encourage you. You're always counting forward. When you're counting for offsides, you are counting for that 7 across that restraining line. because what ends up happening is you don't need to have four back. I mean, a lot of times what you'll have is one of those four back, one of them will be over there talking to their coach, or for whatever reason, they just choose to not even have, 12 players out and they don't have four back. You're looking back and seeing three, and you would call offsides when technically they're not offsides. So just start learning the skill, learn it early as trail, start counting as soon as you start transitioning up the field, and start looking for your seven, or if they're playing short, their appropriate number, so that you're ready to call offside. So that by the time you get to that restraining line, you're ready to just be looking for other things. You already know you have the proper number of players, both offense and defense, beyond that restraining line. Because I tell you, inevitably, you are going to have somebody screaming, offsides, offsides, offsides. And you're going to be, wait, whoa, whoa. And you try to start counting and you may miss it. But I would tell you, most times they are not right. So just start learning to count as you're coming up the field as trail, and looking as they cross that restraining line, making sure you have the right number of people. And if you do, then when people start screaming offsides, offsides, they're not right. Because a lot of times, and the hardest time is when all of a sudden you have a clear, goalie's trying to clear, you don't know who's left the attacking zone and who hasn't. So it gets kind of difficult. So again, just start counting and you do the best you can, but the sooner you get those counts down below that restraining line, the better off you're going to be. Okay, let's see. Okay, hopefully you're never going to see it, but fourth and more yellow cards, you are going to start seeing they're going to play a man down for the rest of the game. So if a team gets 4 yellow cards, that fourth card, they will sit that 2 minutes for the fourth card, and when that fourth card penalty expires, they cannot replace that person. They will play the rest of the game a man down at that fourth, and then honestly, if you continue, they will play a man down for each yellow card beyond that. Again, do you see it a lot? You don't, but you do occasionally. In high school, I've done a fair amount of games where they've gotten to 4 and they've had to play man down for the rest of the game. So again, that's another reason why you have your pen and paper, that you have to keep track. Not only do I know how many yellow cards does number 20 have, but is that the team's fourth card or fifth card or sixth card, so that you can make sure you're doing the right thing when it comes to either suspending a player or having the team play down. Okay, I'm not going to waste time there. Obviously, cards will carry from quarter to quarter. So player gets 2 minutes with 1 minute left on the clock. They are going to have to sit the first minute of the next quarter. Same thing with overtime. I mean, if they end with a penalty, whatever's left of that penalty would in fact have to carry through to the overtime. Yeah, that's the other thing too, would help you. Make sure that you have a clear penalty area over near the timer's desk, and make sure it's clear. I mean, the substitution box is there for substitutions. They're only supposed to be somebody in that substitution box when they are imminently substituting. So they can't just stand there. They have to be ready to go in immediately. So if they're not substituting right then and there, they shouldn't be in that box. That's where you have people that have cards where they are sitting for penalties. The reason, and they're supposed to be there and either sitting or kneeling so that you can see them, because you need to be able to look over there and say, okay, white still got a penalty, or blue still got a penalty. Blue's got 2 in the box. That's the only way you're ever going to know. And if you have people walking around or standing in that box, it makes it very difficult to manage your offsides and your counts if you can't see. So just make sure that if it's coaches or the timers, to keep people out of your substitution boxes, other than somebody who's sitting a penalty. And somebody who is sitting a penalty must be there, and typically either sitting or kneeling in that area. They're the only ones who belong there. Early reentry, hopefully you don't see this a lot. And with a two-person, officiating team, you're never going to know. Yeah, you got too many things going on to know whether somebody entered early. So basically, that's going to be your timer, and you're just going to need to make sure your timer is aware of how much time, and they tell them when they can re-enter. And a lot of times, the timer will actually do that for them. You're back in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So you shouldn't have that issue because there are penalties for early reentry. But again, I'll tell you, with just two of you out there, it's almost impossible to catch somebody entering early unless they enter really early and all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, they're off sides. Well, why are they off sides? Well, they let that penalty go. And a lot of times in the youth level, it's not that the player did it, but maybe your timer made a mistake. So you kind of got to play it by ear on that. We already talked about that. Talked about that. Okay, just so you know, and we didn't do this, but if you're going to give a card, obviously I told you that a card typically is going to be a nice hard whistle, so louder whistle than maybe you would have given for something else. You're going to call a timeout. So you see the umpire here signaling with their arms over their head, calling a timeout. Okay, you're going to basically make sure that you have the offender. In this case, number 15. It was easy. She's the only one there. But you're going to make sure. And a lot of times this isn't always the easiest thing. Is okay, who just did that? So try to get a number. And okay, that was 12 or that was 15. And have them come towards you. So number 15, come towards me. Or, because you'd like to avoid you approaching them. It's just too aggressive, let's put it that way. So you stand, you call timeout, number 15, come to me. What that's going to do, and you're going to want them to face to show their jersey to the score table so that they score table, and then that's where you're going to give your signals. Okay, you're going to take out your yellow card, put it up in the air, 15 blue, check to the head, 2 minutes. Okay, and you can do that all, that's all hand signals and verbal, and obviously you're going to make sure 15 knows. I will tell you, at the youth level, half the time they don't know what you're doing. They don't know what a card is. They don't know what they're supposed to do. 15, you need to go and sit on the bench or sit at the table over there for 2 minutes. So just tell them nicely. I tell you, your first couple games, you're going to have kids crying when you give them a card. The little kids just don't get that a card is just okay, you shouldn't be doing that. They take it very seriously, and you'll have kids crying, but it is what it is. And then just make sure that the table knows, because if they're going to be timing for you, make sure they know what the deal is. And what I'll try to do is, say a penalty happens at 8:34, I'll say she gets out at 6:34, and I'll actually yell that either to my partner or to the table so they know she gets out at 6:34. And honestly, at the youth level with a running clock, penalties are so quick. It honestly, that doesn't end up being that huge a deal. But you want to make sure the table knows what they're doing. Okay, let's see. Now let's see if I can get to where I want to be. That's not it. Oh, that's it. Okay, well, let's do the youth FAQ. Now, I'm not going to go through these, but they were some good stuff that I saw earlier today. This is where your challenges are going to be, because at youth, basically the big difference is checking. And checking obviously is stick and stick to body. So let's talk about them. Okay, any kind of stick to body at youth is prohibited. This is big. I mean, and that definition makes your job way easier. And so what does that mean? It basically means you can't be touching somebody's body with your stick. So all of you go to college games. College games, these players practically kill each other. I mean, they're steering, they got the stick horizontal. A lot happens at the college level. High school, somewhat more so. I mean, you may see a player put their stick, lean their stick on somebody's shoulder and try to steer them. They probably get away with that too, as long as the stick isn't horizontal. At the youth level, you are not going to allow that. And the sooner you jump on it and don't allow it and stay consistent, the better you're going to be. Okay. They cannot use their stick on somebody's body. And, the old meet and greet, that is unacceptable if they are meeting and greeting with that stick. Now, if you really dig into the definitions, if their stick is at 10 and 2, where it's supposed to be, proper stick position, and they're coming in and they are basically gauging distance with their hands touching another player, that is going to be acceptable as long as they are not displacing, pushing or displacing. So just touching another player with your hands with the stick in a proper position is not a foul. As soon as you touch them with your stick, that is a foul. Okay, so think about that. Okay, let's see. So let's go through some of these. Defender uses their stick to make contact with an opponent's body. Major foul, can't do it. Defender's opponent moves their body into defender's stick, which is held in horizontal. Okay, horizontal obviously is different than 10 and 2. 10 and 2 is legal. You're going to get away with a lot more. But if I don't care if the attacker moves into a defender who has their stick horizontally, that's on the defender. Horizontal stick is a no-no all the time. Any contact with a horizontal stick is a major foul. Okay. Defender makes contact with the opponent's body with their hand or their forearm. Okay. As long as their stick doesn't touch them, that is okay. So their hands, again, stick 10 and 2. Stick drops below 10 and 2, something's going to happen. Okay. Horizontal sticks, bad things are going to happen. You got a foul coming. Okay, same thing. If they make legal contact with their hands or forearm, but then they move their stick and the stick touches the body, that becomes a foul. Let's see. After a defender makes illegal contact with the opponent's body with their hand or forearm, the opponent rolls their body, causing the defender's stick to contact the body. No call. Okay. The attacker created that positioning. Okay. So everything was legal until the attacker shifted their body, making contact with that stick. That would be a no call until such time as it became dangerous. As long as that defender does not go horizontal or start pushing, you're probably going to let play on. So, all right. Again, one of the biggest things I see is, and they're really taught, and unfortunately, it even moves down into the youth, as they're being taught to steer. Defense is being taught to try to steer an attacker away from the goal with their stick. That's a foul, and it's going to be an 8-meter shot anytime, and that's a good place where you'd use your flag. So you have an attacker coming at the net. Defender gets that stick, whether it's 10 or 2 or coming down to horizontal, but the stick is touching body. That's good. That would be a good place to flag to see if that attacker still can get a reasonable shot off. If they do, okay, all's good, and you put the flag away. But if not, then you're going to adjudicate that flag, and they're going to get an 8-meter shot. So you see a lot of the steering. The other thing is you'll see the bump. I mean, a lot of times you'll have a defender who'll come up to an attacker, and they're going to kind of do the forearm shot. I mean, where they're kind of punching or bumping with it. That's going to be illegal too. Anytime you see those elbows lifting, those arms straightening out, either extending or just in a punch, that's going to be a foul. Okay. These are the kind of things at the U14 you're really going to have to watch for, because again, and I can't guarantee that your counterparts elsewhere are going to call it the same way, but these are how you need to call it for everybody to be on the same page. Okay, any questions? I mean, like I said, basically you can't touch another player's body with your stick. I mean, and we're talking really U14 where transitional checking is happening. Now, now that I'm thinking about it, one thing you are going to run into, because I know I have, is you're going to have teams show up. Now, I know Badgerland, your rule, you're going to be using, as far as I know, you're using transitional at U14. You are going to potentially have teams coming in that are going to have different designations. They may be a U12 that do modified checking, and yet the 12s are going to play those 14s because it's just how they match up and how they classify. You need to be really clear at your coaches meeting who's playing, what are these teams' ratings? What are their classifications? Because if one coach thinks they're playing modified, the other one's thinking transitional, you're going to have a problem. So that's where you're going to have a discussion with the coaches is, okay, what are we playing? I mean, I always play Switzerland and say, I don't care. You guys need to decide how you want this game played. Is it going to be modified or is it going to be transitional? So that you're very aware of what you're going to be calling and that all the players are going to be aware as well. A lot of times it's really hard for a team that's only played modified to all of a sudden go against a transitional checking team. It's just crazy. And then you get the U10s, they can't check at all. So that's a whole different deal. All right, let's see. Okay, oops. Changes. All right, free movement. These are some of the ones that I wanted to go through. We still have time. Okay, free movement. Big improvement. Okay, so this is where, and this is, you're going to have free movement for even at the youth level. I think there's some nuances to it, but now you're not having to worry about everybody, whether they're moving or not. Really, the only places that you have to worry about free movement is when you blow a foul. Okay, when you're going to call a foul, the people that need to stop are going to be the people that are involved in the foul. Everybody else can kind of keep doing their own thing, wandering, however. But you're going to have to find the person who was fouled, the person doing the fouling, and then anybody who's within that 4-meter circle around them. Here's the deal with free movement. They have decided that youth level is still going to require a pause. Okay, that's a difference from high school. High school, they don't need to stop anymore, thank God. But youth, and probably from a learning, it may be a better deal because now they can be taught. But in the youth level, a player that is fouled must pause. Okay, so they're going to have to stop. So you have to stop them. You have to take the person that fouled, set them up either 4 behind or 4 away, or if it's a sideline, the 2 meters in. Everybody else is fine. Okay, we already said must clear the penalty zone. Thank God they don't have to worry about the, who's going where when they clear the zone. Yeah, again, we talked about that. Substitutes are fine. Okay, people can sub and fine. They don't have to worry about it. Used to be if you blew a foul and all the next thing you know, everybody had to stop. They couldn't substitute. Well, now with free movement, they can continue to substitute even though you're setting up the foul. You are aware, however, that they cannot substitute. Free movement doesn't allow them to substitute during the draw. You got 2 of you when you're setting it up. Your trail person not doing the draw is going to be counting, making sure you have the proper number of players on the field prior to the draw. The person doing the draw is sitting there looking to their partner for indicating that they have counted and that the count is right. As soon as that trail official nods or whatever signal they give to the person doing the draw, the person will place their hands on the sticks to initiate the draw. Soon as those hands go on the stick, there is no more substitution. If somebody jumps onto the field, that is a illegal substitution. That is going to be a minor foul, and you're going to basically, if white runs onto the field, illegal procedure, black ball, and you hand black the ball at the draw is done, and they can self-start. Okay, so any entry after the hands are on the sticks would be illegal procedure, illegal entry. Also, they cannot cross the restraining lines. Once those hands are on the stick, there is no more changing positions on with the restraining lines. I mean, sometimes people, I wanted to be on the circle. Well, you can't now. It's too late. Okay, hands on the stick is the end of that. All right, let's look at transitional checking we were talking about. All right, basically transitional, you're going to have a 12-inch sphere around the head. Okay, so that, honestly, 12 inches is pretty big. Get yourself a ruler and you can see that puts a pretty big bubble around the head. So they cannot check anywhere within that sphere. Okay, so you're going to obviously a check to the head is a yellow card, but you have in the sphere is a foul in and of itself, and continued checking into the sphere would be a yellow card as well. And like I said, a 12-inch sphere is a pretty big deal. So you're going to want to keep those sticks away from people's heads. And the big trick is to call them. I mean, call illegal, stick in the sphere, and you're going to stop them, and you're going to, set up the major foul, because if you keep letting them do it, and again, I would be inclined, especially at the youth level, I am not going to use advantage for a stick in the sphere. They got to know it's unacceptable to do it. And so you're going to blow it up big, and you're going to set up that foul. And if I have a player, again, as I mentioned this before, that does it more than once or twice, I'm going to start yellow carding it for repeated major fouls. Even though they didn't hit him in the head, I'm going to call it a yellow card. So you got to really watch that at transitional checking. Now, this is an interesting one, and I hadn't seen this before, kind of an interesting interpretation, but they're basically saying that, 12 inches is the sphere, but they're saying that if a player is cradling at 7 inches, now you're not going to run around with measuring tapes or rulers, but if somebody is actually cradling at 7, basically well, number one, if they're cradling at 12, they can't be checked. If they're cradling at 7, they certain can't be checked. But they're saying that even if, okay, I'm kind of getting off back. Basically, there's a foul, illegal cradle. If a player brings their stick too close to their face and is cradling inside of that, let's say 12 inches, basically there's two things going on. I mean, they're cradling within their sphere, which means another player, if they were to check them, would be checking illegally. So it's an unfair advantage to the person who cradles within their sphere. So what they're doing is they're saying basically between 7 and 12 inches, you're probably not going to call it unless it continues. But you will see there are times that certain players will consistently carry their cross right up near their face so that no one can check them legally. That would be a illegal cradle, and it's a change of possession. So you're going to have to watch. And typically what will happen is you may see it and you may call it. More often than not, though, somebody's going to come up and say, hey, number 12 is cradling, close to their face, and we can't check. So then you're going to watch them, and you probably get them the next time. So like I said, you're not going to have a measuring tape, but between that 7 and 12 inches, you're probably not going to call it. But and even here says that it's probably giving them a short-term advantage. So you're going to want to make sure they aren't doing it constantly. Oh, I'll tell you where one of the things you do notice is a lot of times when an attacker is going and they're going right to the net and there's defenders there and they have sticks up, usually in good legal defense, and the player who's attacking will bend down. They'll bend at the waist and try to like sneak under those sticks. Keep a good eye because that's when you see a legal cradle. It's really hard to bend over at the waist with your stick in a legal position. Usually they'll scoop it up and they'll bring it closer to their face to get through the hole, and then they'll come up and try to shoot. So when they're trying to sneak through legal defenders, a lot of times a double team, that's when you're going to see an illegal cradle because that's what will typically happen. Okay, and then really the only reference here to modified checking is it is out there. So if you do run into, U12s, you would see that basically that's sticking or checking below the shoulder. Okay, so they can't bring it up above that shoulder level. So they can't check as long as the stick is available and it's below the shoulder. Usually games like that, you get quite a few calls that are, illegal checks because, the player will have their stick up, above their shoulder, and all of a sudden somebody comes and tries to check it. And so that would be an illegal check in a modified game. It would be a legal check as long as it was outside of their sphere in a transitional game. All right, self-start. I think we probably talked about this as much as anything. The big thing is now they are going to pause, but they're not going to have to be required to whistle. So let's just think about the things you could run into with a self-start. Basically, you blow a whistle for a foul, and you're going to start setting it up. Okay. The player who was fouled, you've already given directions, so everybody knows it's black ball. So black is standing there. They stop, they pause, their feet are set. They decide they like what they see. They can go. They can immediately go. And as soon as they go, everybody around them can now engage. Okay? A lot of times you will see coaches or the peanut gallery. Oh, they didn't give her 4. Well, they don't have to give her 4. If that attack player decides to self-start, as soon as they self-start, wherever those other players are, they can now engage. So what happens is you blow the whistle, black knows it's their ball, they've got a settled stance. 3 white that fouled has only taken 1 step away, but they're on their way behind, and there's another player that's right in front of them, and they take a step starting to move 4 away, but the person self-starts. Everything's done. They can immediately engage. They are not entitled, if they choose to self-start, to any more than what was there when they self-started. Now, that said, I will tell you, if you start seeing another team standing around, so now you blow the whistle, 6 black has the ball, and the white team is all kind of standing there. They're not moving away. They're not necessarily following your directions very quickly. At some point, you can card. You're gonna make them give the 4 meters. But more so than not, the fact that they're not even trying, that's more likely to be a cardable event. That's a delay game, and if it continues to happen, I'm going to card it because they're not even attempting to move away. They must attempt to move away. But once, like I said, once the self-start occurs, they can engage immediately. We already talked about what do they have to see before they can engage? Player with the ball must take a step, even if it's a shuffle step. It's a step, or they pass the ball. So again, you got to watch for the happy feet. If they start happy feet, they can be engaged upon. If the feet don't move, and they're standing there just cradling the ball, if somebody moves in on them, I'm gonna blow my whistle. I'm gonna reset them, to make sure they have that 4 meters. And if that keeps happening, I will card the team who is doing it if they're moving in too quickly. Because again, the whole idea is they're meant to learn over time, and cards are oftentimes a good learning experience. Penalty zone, we did. Yeah, well, I think I got through the majority of what I wanted to. We're closing in, even though we started a little late on 8 o'clock. The important thing here is I would ask you, you can see right on the screen now, all of those quick resources, which are nothing more than to going to USA Lacrosse and going to the menu under rules, girls rules, and you will see all those. I would encourage you. I tell you, I go in there and I learn something all the time. All those things are available. When you have some time, go through and look at them. I would encourage you to spend a lot of time between now and April 7th on the rule book, looking at the rules. Definitely spend time in that manual about your setups and your situational, how to handle certain situations, because that's what I'm going to be looking for. So on the 7th, and all of you are required to be there on the 7th, what you're going to be doing is we're going to be, number one, you're going to be actually umpiring games. So I would expect all of you to show up with, your whistles, with your cards, your jerseys, depending on the weather, dress for it. If it's going to be cold, I would encourage you to have a black jacket, long black pants, and we can referee with them. But the whole idea is we're going to be evaluating you actively umpiring on the field. We may do some group stuff, looking at officiating draws, maybe doing some setups, looking at different things in the critical scoring area. But the big thing is going to be to see if you have basically absorbed what we've talked about and what you're seeing and reading in the rule books and in the manuals. And that determination will be made on the 7th, which I will pass on to Scott, and you would be assigned. Certainly, and again, I understand that online doesn't offer great, sharing opportunities, but the 7th is another opportunity for us to be able to talk about and ask questions. And with that, I'll leave you with one thing. We'll see each other on the 7th,
Yep.
but as the season
Good job.
progresses, I would ask you, you need to find yourself a mentor, and who that is, I don't care. It just needs to be somebody who you trust that is going to give you good guidance. Just because you're officiating with somebody doesn't mean they know the rules. You need to make sure that
You don't mind
whoever
if I
you're
don't come in?
asking
No.
for help,
Right.
that they are actually going to be able to give you
What?
good guidance. So certainly there are people within the different associations that will be able to do, but if you have questions, get your questions answered either in the rule books or by finding a contact who you can ask, so that we're all on the same page and that the right rules are being handled on the field. Because there's nothing worse than having somebody go, well, that's not how they did it last week. So we need to all be on the same page. So with that, I look forward to seeing and meeting you all on the 7th of April, and we're getting closer, so we're looking forward to a great lacrosse season. All right, thanks everybody.
I have a really quick question.